A whole bunch of y'all saw this video over here. Should I be a member of the National Association of Realtors? So if you didn't watch that, feel free to go back and look at it before you see me answering a couple of things here. There's a lot of bad information out there, and frankly, I don't know why there's so much of it, but let me just clear a couple things up for you, because you may be looking at becoming a realtor, you may be a realtor, you may just be a consumer who's trying to figure out all these headlines. Let me just help a little bit, okay? So the first thing, I had a member send me a series of messages fussing about their local branch of NAR. All right, there is no local branch of NAR. When you are a member of the National Association of Realtors, meaning you wear the R, whether you're wearing the red one for the commercial or the blue one for residential, you belong to three organizations, three separate organizations. What ties those three organizations together is that R, that trademark. And so it's that phrase realtors, which does not apply to everyone who has a license, by the way. It is the member of the trade association that gets to wear the R. The trade association, though, when you become a member of one, you become a member of three. We call that the three-way agreement. Now, when you become that member, you are a member of the National Association of Realtors. That's one entity. The second entity that you belong to is your state association of realtors. So for me, being in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, I belong to the North Carolina Realtors and also the South Carolina Realtors. Those are my state associations. They're separate entities that serve separate states, separate regulations, separate general statutes. The third body that you belong to, again, a separate entity, is your local association of realtors. So to the person who was talking about their local branch of NAR, they're talking about their local entity, which is not NAR. We just share the realtor R, and when you belong to one, you belong to three. So just make sure you're aware of how that works. Now, that next person who was asking questions is doing research, and this is somebody who's getting their license. And so high five and double thumbs up to the person who's considering joining the trade association and is asking first. The place that you're supposed to learn all of this is in new member orientation. Now, new member orientation is run by the local association of realtors, your local entity, and everybody does it different. Some places the staff conduct it, some places volunteers conduct it, some it's virtual, some it's in person. It's different based on different local traditions. But that new member orientation is where you're going to get so much information. That being said, it's 8 hours in most areas, and it's a fire hose. And how in the name of heavens would you retain all that information? I feel you, honey. So when you join the association, you have gotten your license and you have said, I want to belong to the trade association, I want to be a realtor, then you're going to come sign up. Now, signing up for all three organizations means you're paying dues to all three, and then you're paying generally some sign-up fees for your multiple listing service. And it's something that's seldom talked about in the licensing classes, is that joining the realtor bodies is going to be generally about $2,000 worth of dues. Now, you're going to be asked to pay that before you've sold anything. So this is why, if you listen to me or anybody else, got a video over here, it talks about, should I be a realtor, things to know getting in. I mean, get yourself educated. You're going to be in the hole financially getting into this business. It's no different than if you bought a McDonald's franchise. You'd have to pay a franchise fee. You'd be paying any kind of startup cost for a business. So I want you to think about that $2,000 as your startup cost. It is your passageway into our data system, which is our multiple listing service, which is built on fair and free marketplace. It is where we have cooperation built in. It is what gives you a start, frankly, is by having that data capacity to share with your peers. That's the startup cost of the MLS. Your startup cost in the association, well, what do you get for that money? Well, it depends on which of the three entities we're talking about. So the $2,000 does not all go to the National Association. If they received all of that money, frankly, we'd have no way to operate our state and local associations. So the dollars are split based on the organization's dues. At your local level, depends on what your local organization is as to what you're getting when you buy into that trade association. For me, locally, belonging to the Central Carolina Realtors, I know that what I'm getting are member luncheons that are full of information, as well as being an opportunity to network. I'm going to get to hear from elected officials and from candidates about where they stand on issues. I'm going to get to attend educational classes for my continuing education. There are a ton of benefits to belonging to your local association, and that's what you're paying for, is access to those bodies. At the state association here in North Carolina, what you're paying for with your dues is access to the library of forms, which are put together jointly with the Real Estate Commission and the North Carolina Realtors, with a whole bunch of lawyers involved to make sure everything is following the general statutes. You're going to have access to those pieces of paper, which are wildly important to your clients because it saves them so much money. And you're also going to have access to legal hotline. You're going to have access to a lot of benefits to your business in those startup costs. And you're now going to be a part of the largest trade association in North Carolina, which is talking to our lawmakers about the things that impact property. For example, just in the last couple of weeks, the realtors have been engaged with the homeowners insurance situation. The North Carolina Rate Bureau was asking for a 42% increase on homeowners insurance in most counties, up to 99.4% at the coast. And the realtors, because we worked together, got involved and said, our clients can't handle that. And so the insurance commissioner, Mike Causey, stopped that rate increase. And so now we're waiting to hear how the negotiations go. But that's the kind of advocacy we do. Now, that one you may have heard about simply because it was really broad-based and hit all 100 counties in North Carolina. And a whole bunch of normal people were interested in it because it was going to impact their pocketbook. But quite often, our advocacy issues are just going to not fall into the exciting place of the mainstream media news source. It's just not super sexy, but we're in there doing that work. And for example, last year in North Carolina, we were concerned about consumer protections with a company that was signing people up to have a lien on their property that would force them to use a specific agent in the future. And that is just really a bad process that was hurting the consumer. So the realtors worked with our lawmakers and the commission to get that predatory practice stopped. That's the kind of advocacy work that we do when we talk to you about advocacy. Now, that third organization that you're joining, the National Association of Realtors, well, what do you get from there? The number one thing you hear talked about from the National Association is advocacy. So what do we do in DC? Well, pay attention, because some of the things that we work on are perpetual issues, simply because we keep electing lawmakers that don't really want to solve anything. They just keep punting the can down the road. And a classic example of that is flood insurance, which is provided, of course, by FEMA. And it only covers up to $250,000 on a house. So it's certainly not a rich folks perk. It is for regular folks. And it is a program desperately in need of reform. Well, the realtors, through the National Association, have been working on reforms and suggesting reforms and bringing ideas forward for the last 17 years, but it hasn't made any progress yet. However, we have been able to get the current program extended 25 times in those 17 years. And if you're thinking, Leigh, that doesn't affect me, yes, it does, honey, because if it rains where you live, it can absolutely flood. And we want to make sure that people have access to the program, because not everybody whose house floods is living on the Mississippi River where they expect the waters to come in. Some folks live in the mountains and they did not expect the rains to come that way. They did not expect that gully washer. And then you also have the situation where FEMA draws the maps based on the maps that they draw. And frankly, I think it's about premiums, and prove me wrong, but when you're drawing a map, you may take Mama's house that has been high and dry for 40 years, and then FEMA drew a flood zone around it. Well, she may want to carry insurance now because of erosion changes, development in the area. And so we need to make sure we have flood insurance policies. That's the kind of thing that you're buying into when you become a realtor. Now, that feels like something that's not relevant to you because you just want to help your cousin buy a house. Yes, but the ability for your cousin to buy a house has everything to do with how we as realtors conduct our business with elected officials, and when it comes to the programs that are necessary to make sure that homeownership still is accessible to as many people as possible. So when you're joining the organization, let's recap all of this. The money you're spending is a startup cost for this business, because make no mistake about it, when you become a realtor, you're running a tiny micro business, and you're going to have to tell your neighbors they are supporting local when they support you. The second thing you have to know is that there is no local branch of NAR. You belong to 3 distinct bodies that are held together by the Realtor R. And the third thing you've got to know is that the work's been going on for decades and decades, and you're coming in on the shoulders of some people who have really given their life's work to their neighbors being able to buy and sell houses. Because here in America, it is a unique opportunity that we offer to people, which is one of the reasons people come here from all over the world and they want to buy a property. They want a piece of the action because they want a chance to have some stability and some home ownership in their veins too. So all that being said, are there issues with the National Association? Absolutely. I still think there's a lot of house cleaning that needs to happen, but that does not mean that we interrupt the work that's going on. Are there places to improve our state associations? Absolutely. Do I think North Carolina gets it right? Of course I do, but I'm always going to be looking for opportunities to make it better so we can serve better. And then at the local association level, we're, of course, same thing. Doing great work, we need to continually make ourselves stronger. So when you become a realtor, that's what you're buying into. Before you fall for all of the angry things that are said on the internet or on social media, talk to somebody who's maybe going to give you the other viewpoint so you can develop your ideas and your opinions a little bit beyond those headlines.